Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm gonna apologize now. I'm at work, so if I go to sorry.
It's okay. It's mostly me today, so you should be able to mute the whole time. I'm just checking everybody off that's here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I have a very valid excuse for being a minute or two behind here. This was my situation until about 5 minutes ago. I mean, I couldn't disturb him. He's so cute.
Absolutely not. You're required by law.
Exactly. I could definitely get in trouble for that. Alrighty, while I am checking everybody off, does anybody have any questions about what we've been talking about or anything coming up? I'll pull up the syllabus just so, again, we're all on the same page. It's just, I think, helpful to do this occasionally. Alrighty, so we have another discussion day on Monday, and you'll be reading stuff from both Maslow and Rogers, and then Csikszentmihalyi, who we'll talk about today. Yes, that's how you pronounce his name. So we will talk about that a little bit later today. And then exam 2 is on Wednesday. Woohoo! So it'll be the exact same format that we had last time. You have your take home posted already, so you can be working on that over the weekend. One thing that I've gotten questions about that I do want to clarify is that the Blackboard readings do count like the pieces readings. So if you want to incorporate like the Blackboard reading we did on, we shouldn't bother researching psychoanalysis, you can do that. And that counts as like using a pieces reading. So,
Are there going to be...
I got to get the exam on Blackboard. Woohoo!
Are there going to be the same amount of like short answer questions?
Yes. So 4 short answers, and then the 30 multiple choice.
Okay. And we'll still just have the 50 minutes.
Mhm.
All right. I'll prepare myself.
Yeah. And again, if you're someone who like agonizes over the short answers, do them first to get them out of the way. Use little hacks for yourself. Yeah, I mean, it's written to work in the 50 minutes. I'll give you, an extra 10 like I did last time. Yeah, I think the technology is part of what's causing the problem because people have always been able to do it in class the same length. But I think that it's harder to process when it's on a screen. So I completely understand. I should just redo my attendance sheet so it's in alphabetical order by first name because that's how you're listed on Zoom. Alrighty. And we'll have time at the end of the day, or we'll probably take it at the beginning of the day on Monday, honestly, for questions, clarifications, things like that. The review sheet is with the same place that the review sheet was for exam 1. And you'll have extra credit on the in-class portion like you did last time. So, alrighty. Well, it would help if I actually had the PowerPoint open. Give me a sec here. Like in my mind, I had opened it, but it's Friday. I'm just gonna cut myself some slack. Alrighty. So today we're going to start by talking about existentialism, and actually that's all we're going to cover today. So we'll be talking about, and it might seem kind of weird to talk about this with humanism, if you're familiar with their overall theories, but what you'll see is there are quite a few things that they share in common. So I do have the chat open. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them there. And we will go ahead and get started here. So those of you who may have taken philosophy classes might be familiar with the ideas of existentialism. I still need to adjust my camera up a little bit. Oh, that's better. And it's a broad philosophical movement that began in the mid-1800s, and then people who essentially ascribed to existential philosophy developed existential theory of psychology and personality. So it was a reaction against rationalism, science, and the Industrial Revolution. They said rationalism had gone too far in attempts to account for everything, that they had actually lost touch with the human experience as a result. So the purpose was to regain contact with the experience of being alive and aware. And so existentialism comes from the same root as the word existence, ex meaning out, and stare meaning stand. So the idea was standing out via self-consciousness, not like, oh, I'm self-conscious, but actual consciousness of yourself. Self-reflection, choice, responsibility, creativity, and love. So questions that come up here are, what does it mean to be human rather than just a face in the crowd, a brick in the wall? What does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to say, I am? Here are some quotes that do get at the feel of this movement. So Sartre, if anyone's ever read him, his play that this quote is from is called No Exit. I actually read it in the original French when I was in high school. And one of his quotes is, hell is other people. Great uplifting Friday, woohoo! But some of this stuff is more poetic and pretty, I think. And, not that hell is other people is not thought-provoking, right? But certainly, again, a different take, right, than we were just talking about, although some of the same ideas. You can imagine Roger's idea about conditions of worth, right, being related to this. Take away love and our earth is a tomb, said Robert Browning. And I am, therefore I, blank, Rollo May. May thought Descartes got it wrong. It wasn't, I think, therefore I am. You existed first. So if you actually turn on the clicker. Again, Friday, everybody. All right. So Freud talked about the dynamics of unconsciousness, right, or unconscious thought. Existentialists talked about the dynamics of consciousness. So gives us power. I take responsibility for myself. I take responsibility for my actions. I take responsibility for other people. Acceptance and transcendence were a big part of this. Accepting life as it was, but also trying to transcend. Again, the sort of like a face in the crowdness. Creativity, love, responsibility, self-reflection, imagination, promise, hope, faith, devotion, and they even included relationship with God as something that flowed from the dynamics of consciousness. So again, just like we were talking about with the humanists, here it is, what does it mean to be a human being? Verb, right? A human being what? And Rollo May said, that's the point. Existentialists. So it engages us in the process of being or going against being. May argues that Hamlet got it wrong. It's not to be or not to be, it's to be and not to be. All right, so they also talked about authentic versus inauthentic living. So authentic living was the goal for existentialists. And if you were living inauthentically, that was really problematic. So they talked about freedom versus enslavement. And enslavement could mean literal enslavement, but it also meant enslavement to habit, to external forces, to other people. Courage versus cowardice. There's the idea that there's no courage without fear. The same consciousness that makes us capable of being courageous can also make us cowards. Responsibility versus selfishness. Commitment versus alienation. Efficacy versus powerlessness. Some people make themselves a brick in the wall because they can't take the uncertainty, the pain, the complexity, and that leads us nowhere. And so then they talked about existential dilemmas, and these are things that everybody faces, and they argue there's no exit or escape from these. You have to face them whether or not you want to. So the biggest one is death, right? As of right now, we have no way to maintain immortality, right? All humans will die. So an existential exercise is to write your own obituary. What would you have stood for? And that can give you the challenge and reflection of thinking, how are you going to live? Life has meaning only as it relates to death. Freedom to existentialists is a dilemma. So this is the freedom to manage yourself through the power to imagine and the power to create. Sartre said people were condemned to freedom. Freedom is not just another word for nothing else to lose. It means everything to gain. And again, it needs a lot of responsibility, right? If you take hold of that freedom, you can't just listen to what everyone else tells you what to do. Isolation and separation, this was very poignant right now, right? So we're all prisoners within the dynamics of our own consciousness. We are all alone in many ways. And how do we deal with that? The existentialists were the only people to say about love, caring, and giving that it's important, but you can also get singed, right? They acknowledge that. We all know that, but they're sort of the only personality theorists to acknowledge that. That's why it's a dilemma. Do you protect yourself and stay isolated, or do you try to, make maybe that love connection, that friendship connection, and risk the potential of being hurt? And then there's meaninglessness versus and powerlessness. The power of the mind to understand is also the power of the mind to become confused. Right? Anyone who's been in any kind of class ever is aware of this, right? So you simultaneously confront and transcend each of these dilemmas. And these dilemmas are the existential dynamic consciousness, unconsciousness, everything together. Existentialists argue everything we do is a set of choices, including the choice not to choose that can lead to running and lying. They would say that if you say, I can't do something, you should say instead, I won't. I will not. It is my choice. Not that I cannot. Some other force is keeping me from doing it. I will not. And that's scary. Imagine saying to your friends who want to go out, I will not go out with you. I have to study. You are choosing studying over them in that scenario, rather than, oh, studying is keeping me from going out with you. Right? So one of the main tenets, one of the main causes of psychopathology for existential psychologists is the idea of bad faith. So bad faith is ignoring the existential questions. Again, they said you can't do it, right? Even if you are trying to ignore them, you're choosing not to choose, right? And if you try to run, you'll pay the price. You'll experience meaninglessness, purposelessness, isolation. If you try to run, you'll live a lie. And it creates three problems that existentialists saw: living a cowardly lie, unhappiness, and they said, to be honest, it's just not possible to just keep ignoring these questions, right? You're going to die someday, right? You have to deal with these questions. What is not possible is not to choose. If I do not choose, I am still choosing, said Sartre. So what they argued is, instead, you should strive for authentic existence as the alternative to bad faith. So authentic existence is being honest, insightful, and morally correct. So honest, insightful, and morally correct. So it is the alternative to bad faith. They said it won't magically fix everything. It won't relieve loneliness or unhappiness because, again, super optimistic and uplifting, every person is alone and doomed. Woohoo! Life has no meaning beyond what you give it, they say. So you have to come up with your own meaning. You have to ascribe meaning onto your life. And they said the essence of human experience is understanding that you must die. And understanding is the price of an authentic life. You are choosing to address all those conflicts, and thus you are choosing to own up to the fact that, like, life's not perfect and I'm not going to be around forever. So they said, in order to live an authentic existence, you should ask, what does life want from me? And then strive to better the human condition. So being is an act of being something, right? Again, thinking of this as a verb, not a noun. And they called this term Dasein. Da meaning there, and sein meaning being. So essentially, being there. Existing, being there. When I took this class in undergrad, Michael Levine told us this great story about when his daughter was little, probably a little bit older than Quinn is now. And he said to her, you know, she would just repeat everything he would say. So he said to her, can you say, I'm a turkey? And she started to say, I'm, and she kind of looked at him and said, you a turkey? And he said, that's the moment of Dasein. That's the moment of being there and not just like repeating and being in the moment, but thinking about what's happening. And they kind of divide experience into these different aspects. So there is the biological experience, or the Umwelt. These are the sensations you feel by virtue of the fact that we are biological organisms. Okay, so the sensations you feel by virtue of being a biological organism. So it's to have to do with the physical world. So here means around, and Welt means world. So the world around us, essentially. So this is the experience of and relationship with the natural world outside of ourselves, but also within ourselves. So it's about being in touch with our own bodily sensations as well. So that's the Umwelt, the physical world. Then there's the social experience, or the Mitwelt. And this is what you think and feel as a social being. As we've established, humans are social animals, we're pack animals, right? So this is an important part of our life. This is our relationship with other people. Bit here means with, so essentially with the world. And so there's an existential quote here that I'm going to type in the chat because I think otherwise it's hard to wrap your head around. Okay, so we are one person. So if we're trying to be in a relationship with other people, we first have to acknowledge that we are a person, right? We're people. We come with our own baggage, right? And then it is, we are two alone, TWO. So there's two people in a relationship, but they're both individuals still, right? We are three together. So two people in the relationship, but the relationship itself becomes another being. And in fact, if you ever do couples or family therapy, they say that your client is not the two individuals, it's the relationship between them. And then we are for, FOR, each other. So we want equality in our relationships. So we are one person, we are each individuals. We are two alone. So we're in this relationship together, but we're both still individuals. So there's times where you're going to feel alone in that relationship. We are three together, two people plus the being that is the relationship. And then we are for each other. We want that equality in a relationship. And then there's the psychological experience, and that's the Eigenwelt. This is the experience of experience itself. I'll say this again. The experience of experience itself. Sort of a meta experience. It's your own world, how you experience and create it, your identity, your creativity, your coping, your commitment. So our experience of and construction of meaning in our world. And eigen here means own or one. So one world or own world. And existentialists said we exist simultaneously in all three of these worlds. They said we also fail to exist on all three levels. We don't take care of the natural world, including ourselves internally, right? In relationships, we don't always do the best. We try to dominate and exploit each other. And then we can disrespect ourselves and choose not to create, express, and value things. So then they talked about concepts of thrownness and angst. Thrownness was the time, place, and circumstances into which you happen to be born. So the time, place, and circumstances into which you happen to be born. Thrownness is an important basis of your experience. And they argued that being thrown into modern society, again, thinking about modern society as the Industrial Revolution initially, right? But you could certainly apply it to now as well. They said that that is particularly difficult. They say partially because religion tends to play a small role in creating meaning and purpose now. And modern substitutes for religion have failed to provide an alternative worldview to tell us why we're here and what we should do. So I don't think they were arguing for a return to like the church state, right, where they just told you what to think. But they were arguing that because we've moved away from that, it's really difficult because we have to figure it out ourselves, right? Again, it's that freedom and responsibility. Angst is, and again, this is a term, just like some of Freud's terms, is a term that's made its way into popular culture, like, oh, they're so angsty, or, oh, I have existential angst. Like, that comes right from here. This is the unpleasant feeling caused by contemplating the meaning of life and how you should spend your time. So the unpleasant feeling caused by contemplating the meaning of life, and how you should spend your time. So angst is sort of the result of thrownness, right? Because we're in this modern society that doesn't tell us what to believe, we have to figure it out ourselves, and that causes angst. So there's anguish here. Everyone feels anguish because choices are never perfect, right? No matter what choice we make, we're always pros to the other one. Forlornness. Each person must make his or her own choices. And despair. There's the awareness that as much as we make choices, there are still outcomes that are outside of our control, right? Right now, we can't control how our administration is handling COVID, right? But we do have power. Make sure you vote. You can vote early. You can vote absentee. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself and make sure your voice is heard. So they said our moral imperative is to face our thrownness, to just be like, this is where I was born, this is what I'm stuck with, and to face that angst directly. And they said this requires existential courage and optimistic toughness. So it requires existential courage and optimistic toughness. So I mentioned Csikszentmihalyi. The way to remember this is Csikszentmihalyi. They were token up together or what, but it's the best way to remember it. So Csikszentmihalyi had this idea about flow, and in fact wrote a whole book about it that I believe is on my shelf. Yeah, hey, right here. Whole book about flow. Chilling on my shelf here. And flow is an optimal experience. So this is how to make the most of your moment-to-moment experience, because the moment-to-moment experience is what really matters in life. So the optimal experience is trying to make the most of your moment-to-moment experience. So you talked about autotelic activities that are just enjoyable for their own sake. So they're enjoyable for their own sake. And he said, this is the best way to spend your time. And flow is the subjective experience of an autotelic activity. So the subjective experience of an autotelic activity. And flow is characterized by tremendous concentration, lack of distractibility, and thoughts concerning only the activity at hand. So you're not distracted by anything else. Your mood is slightly elevated. You're not manic, but you feel good. And time seems to pass very quickly. And he argued that flow arises when the challenges of an activity match the challenges of a person's skills. So that it's a perfect match. There are other names for flow. People will call it runner's high, being in the zone, things along those lines. Okay, so that's flow. And flow arises when the challenges of activity match those person's skills. The secret for enhancing your quality of life, according to Csikszentmihalyi, is to spend as much time in flow as possible. But there's a downside because flow tends to be solitary, right? If you have runner's high, you're out there by yourself, right? And Csikszentmihalyi acknowledged that, you know, again, humans are social creatures, so this is not, you can't spend all your time there, right? So it is a question of like, how much time should we spend? Would you spend all your time there if you could? Now, one of the theories I use when I look at body image is the theory called self-objectification. It's the idea that because our bodies are so commodified in terms of advertising and things like that, we start to see our own bodies as objects. And that can create all sorts of problems that the existentialists would love, right? You know, just sort of like, why am I here? Thinking of yourself as not yourself. And one of the things discussed in the original self-objectification theory is that it's really hard to get into flow if you're experiencing objectification, right? If you are so focused on your body as an object, then that leads to, you not being able to reach these states of flow. Miranda, thank you for answering Amanda's question in the chat. I appreciate that. I was getting there, but I was still talking. All right. Then there's Maddie, last name. And Maddie talked about the concept of hardiness. So stress is not always bad, Maddie argued. Without stress, life would be boring and meaningless. And this idea certainly carries over to modern ideas about anxiety and stress. If anyone's ever seen the Yerkes-Dodson curve, it's a bell curve. And the idea is like the optimal level of stress is the top. So you want sort of like a middle amount of stress. The argument is obviously if you have too much stress, right, it's going to sort of paralyze you and there's not much you can do. But it also argues that if you have too little stress, then you're just going to sort of like rest on your laurels, right, and not get things done. So many people seek to avoid this stress by developing a conformist lifestyle. And this is likely to lead to existential psychological pathology and a false sense of self. So essentially this existential pathology is bad faith. Maddie argued this can also lead to what's called vegetativeness, where the person feels that nothing has meaning and becomes listless and aimless. And this essentially is what can happen if you have too much angst, right? It's the most severe kind of existential pathology to Maddie. And nihilism is where your experience is dominated by anger, disgust, and cynicism. Nihilism is slightly less severe than vegetativeness and more common, Maddie said. So it's much more common to just be angry, disgusted, cynical, right? And if we think sort of anecdotally about our society and how people react to things, yeah, we see that, right? We've probably done that, felt that. When people are seeking to avoid stress by developing this conformist lifestyle, sometimes only extreme thrills will garner one's full attention and distract from deep feelings of meaninglessness. So, this could be promiscuous sex, drug use. It could be, skydiving, right? And Maddie argued that the purpose of this is to conceal the emptiness of life. But he argued that hardiness was the cure for bad faith. Hardiness is a lifestyle that embraces rather than avoids potential sources of stress. So a lifestyle that embraces rather than avoids potential sources of stress. So if you are hardy, if you're someone who has the attribute of hardiness, you're going to embrace stressful things in your life. You're not going to run away from them. So the idea is that stressful and challenging experiences can bring learning, growth, and wisdom, and that's important for giving meaning to life. And that this is related to happiness and adjustment. If you are hardy, Maddie said, you experience control over your own life. You experience being committed to something, commitment in your life. Choice, you're going to make your own choices in life. Again, you can see this really being the antidote to bad faith. Change, right? You're going to see life as growth and process and change. Life isn't going to be stagnant for you. And challenge. Life is going to be challenging. Life is going to be invigorating. And if you look at sort of Roger's idea of the fully functioning person, or Maslow's idea of self-actualization. Like this kind of feels like the same thing, right? So to bring it all together, both existentialism and humanism talk about the human in the process of being, right? And recognizing this is a lifelong process. Existence precedes essence, says Sartre. So being as a participle, it's born of consciousness and responsibility and will. You're not just saying, oh, I have these unconscious forces, or, oh, I'm a black box. It doesn't matter what thoughts are going on. You are being. You are embracing life. You're accepting responsibility. And being is an act of individual creation. And it's marked by continual responsibility and choice. So again, being isn't easy, right? Being isn't something for the faint of heart, right? It takes a lot of courage to exist in our world and acknowledge how much our world sucks sometimes, right? It's a lot easier to just kind of bury our hands in the sand like ostriches that don't actually do that. I don't know if anyone's ever actually heard that, but biologically, ostriches don't actually stick their heads in the sand. I don't know who came up with that idea, but it's not a thing. So it's about taking responsibility and acknowledging that we can, right? And acknowledging that we can better ourselves. Alrighty, so I finished up a little early, but it's Friday, so I'll definitely let you all go early. But I will do my normal sticking around in case anyone has questions, and we can all also admire Debbie's adorable cat. Alrighty, everybody have a good weekend. Wear your masks, be safe.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Have a great weekend.
So when I go back and watch Wednesday's lecture, if you type stuff in the chat, will I be able to see it, or?
You won't, but I have the transcript of the chat, so just shoot me an email, and then I can email you the transcript.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Professor Myers, I will be heading back home, back to DC tonight. And the person I'm driving with isn't leaving until 9 a.m. on Monday. So I'll just be on Zoom on my phone. But I just want to let you know, just in case there's like group work or group assignment or anything like that.
There will be, yeah. So thanks for letting me know.
Okay.
So yeah, just once you get in your group, just ask someone else to type, basically.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me know, Callie. Have a
You're
good
welcome.
trip.
Thank you.
Oh, Dr. Myers. So I actually completed I saw this that the studies came out like I guess a few days ago, and I already completed like a couple of those. But how does that work? Like, do you have to go in and like approve them in order to get extra credit, or how does that?
No. So what happens is I just have an account where I can see all of you all's participation. And so at the end of the semester, I just go in and get all that information and input it. So you don't need to do anything. That's
perfect. That's good to know. Awesome.
Yeah. We followed
Yeah.
the system for years, and we're really glad we have it because it's so much easier on you. It's so much easier on the students conducting research.
It is, and like the studies are actually fun to do and engage.
I mean, I'm obviously super biased, but I think they're fun. I still remember ones I participated in when I was a student. So
awesome. Well, have a great weekend. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions, concerns?
Yes, so I do, Dr. Myers.
All right.
So Wednesday, I'm actually traveling to MEPS, so I was wondering if possible, could I take the test on Monday? Like,
Yeah. We know what would be best if you can is try to arrange to take it in the Learning Center, the LRC.
Yes, ma'am.
Just because then you'll have a can't think of the word, distraction-free place. Yeah, I'll just make sure I have the test done by then. So that'll give me a good goal. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, have a good weekend.
You as well.